Hey there! We've made it to the final presentation on thyroid conditions. Now that you are well educated in the pathology and environmental factors that influence thyroid function, it is time that we focus on remedial methods for healing thyroid conditions. To begin, I would like to focus on dietary interventions for healing thyroid conditions. The best place to start in regards to healing the thyroid is most certainly a 30-day Paleo Reset diet. This 30-day challenge primarily focuses on eliminating vegetable oils like canola and corn oil, in addition to gluten, grains, sugar, and processed foods. During this elimination phase, it is vital to emphasize whole foods like meat, vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds without any regard for caloric restriction. As I always coach my clients to do, eat to satisfaction. In regards to macronutrient ratios, it is very important to include a variety of carbohydrate sources. Research has shown that very low-carb diets reduce thyroid function. My favorite sources of complex carbohydrates are sweet potatoes, plantains, jasmine rice, cassava, and whole fruits. Should you be a highly active athlete, increase your carbohydrate intake to match activity levels. Specific nutrients are also required for optimal thyroid function, particularly selenium and iodine. As mentioned in the environmental toxicity presentation, iodine consumption is incredibly important for thyroid function, as well as for reproduction and growth. On a global scale, iodine deficiency is a significant issue, but less so in the industrialized world. Reduction is likely due to reduced iodized salt intake and insufficient intake of sea vegetables and fish heads. Iodine overconsumption can exacerbate Hashimoto's and other autoimmune thyroid diseases, but only when selenium intake is insufficient. Adequate selenium consumption supports efficient thyroid hormone synthesis and metabolism while assisting in the conversion of T4 to T3, which is protective for the thyroid gland, considering that damage from excess iodine exposure is mitigated by, of course, selenium consumption. The best food sources of iodine and selenium include Brazil nuts, fish, shellfish, beef and lamb kidney, seaweed, fish, poultry, dairy, if well tolerated, cranberries, and potatoes. In addition to these foods, I recommend consuming at least 1 pound of cold water fatty fish each week, which contains the anti-inflammatory compounds EPA and DHA. Inflammation can impact the thyroid negatively and worsen autoimmunity, so therefore, it's really important to include these high-quality sources of fat in your diet. Fatty fish includes herring, tuna, mackerel, salmon, whitefish, and sturgeon. Now, there has been some research that's emerged in the last couple of years that says that high doses of fish oil may actually be counterproductive in reducing inflammation and may exacerbate inflammatory conditions. I, of course, recommend that anyone who is going to experiment with fish oil supplementation do so with a high-quality brand that has really rigorous standards of production, really rigorous standards of sourcing their cod liver, or let's just say the fish that they use to create omega-3s. Now, if you're looking for a good brand, I always recommend Nordic Naturals. I think their products are really, really high quality. But if you're going to experiment with another brand, a nice little test that you can do is to grab one of the capsules of fish oil and bite it, and you're going to bite into it so that you can taste the fish oil. And if the fish oil tastes rancid, that's the type of fish oil that's actually going to exacerbate the inflammatory conditions, because those fatty acids have oxidized, and oxidized fatty acids are inflammatory. Moving on, those that are experiencing thyroid issues should also avoid goitrogenic foods, because goitrogenic foods interfere with iodine absorption in the thyroid. So some foods that may be high in goitrogens include yuca and cassava, soy, millet, sweet potatoes, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, bok choy, kale, and collard greens. Now, previously I mentioned that I use cassava as a complex carbohydrate source, so the question here becomes, what do you tolerate and what intuitively is your body needing? This is very important to consider, especially with foods, because there's an infinite list of foods that have pros and cons that may have some sort of cross-reaction with each other. So in this case, cassava can be a great source of complex carbohydrates, but it's also a goitrogen. So you have to figure out what works for your body, and you have to intuitively eat, connect with your soul, connect with your spirit, and ask yourself, what does my body really need, and what may be a hindrance to the function of my thyroid? Gut health and thyroid function are intimately linked, and as such, I recommend the frequent consumption of fermented foods like kefir or fermented veggies. However, it's important to note that sauerkraut is technically a goitrogen, so I would aim to consume fermented vegetables like carrots or celery, let's say fermented radish, anything that does not contain cabbage. If you're going to consume sauerkraut, I would recommend a really, really small dose with the meals that you consume. However, I would just be mindful, again, of soul connection, listen to your body, and really ask it what it needs. All right, y'all. So finally, I want to mention the mother of all interventions for correcting thyroid imbalances, and that is stress management. Stress management is paramount in mitigating the damaging effects of autoimmune thyroid conditions while preventing the development of thyroid disorders in healthy populations. Now, although our busy lifestyle presents challenges in regards to time management, it is essential that we make time to engage in healing practices that regulate the autonomic nervous system. Otherwise, we will exacerbate thyroid issues, increase inflammatory markers, we'll damage our gut function because you can't digest food if you're too sympathetically activated, and a whole list of other components of the body that need to be in check, regulated by the autonomic nervous system. That taking time to meditate, do deep breathing, yoga, journaling, sauna, cold therapy can be really, really helpful in balancing. So I highly recommend doing some sort of work and practice every day, whether it be zone exercises. You'll experience some of the zone exercises in Seed of the Soul. We'll talk about different ways that you can move with the breath as a way of bringing energy into the body. And ultimately, you have to understand that no amount of work that you do is going to provide you with the fulfillment that you're seeking. This is really, really important to understand because most of us go to work as a means of trying to nourish an aspect of ourselves that is looking for recognition, that is looking for some sort of validation. Now, I want you to consider this. When you go looking for some sort of validation, essentially on a subconscious level, you're saying, I'm not validated, I am not fulfilled. The best work is done when you work from a place of fulfillment. The best work is done when you take time to create from a place of embodiment. Now, easier said than done, I totally get it. It can be super hard. One of the ways that I actually can do this is to bring these work and exercises, these anabolic practitioner, these anabolic activities into my life as a practitioner. So let's say that I want to create a PowerPoint, or let's say I'm working on this presentation before me. We tend to get stressed when we say, okay, cool, I have X, Y, and Z to do, so I'm going to try to do X and then Y and then Z without any break in between. When we learn to manage our time in conjunction and harmony with stress management, we can say, okay, cool, I have X, Y, and Z to do. I'm going to do half of X, then I'm going to do 10 breathing squats. I'm going to finish X and then take a nap. Then I'm going to do Y, but I'm going to pace it slowly and focus on my breath while I do that. It's not necessarily always about making things perfect. It's about learning to integrate. Bring these practices into your work while you're creating from an embodied place, as I've mentioned, and that is when you no longer need to stress yourself out by trying to implement stress management techniques. So that's it for the thyroid presentation, y'all. Thank you for walking with me on this journey. It's been really powerful and really awesome to present all this information on the thyroid. It's a very important gland in the body, as we've mentioned, and yeah, there's a lot to it, but follow all of the principles that I've laid out in this third presentation as a means of supporting your thyroid, and I think you're going to have great success in supporting yourself as well as you can and making sure that your lifestyle is on point. One last note before we end, I just wanted to mention that thyroid health is often intimately linked to communication. The throat chakra is directly related to the function of the thyroid, in my belief. Call me hippy dippy, whatever you want. The point there is that when we have stifled energies within our communication centers, when we're not voicing our opinions, when we feel that we can't express ourselves and be honest without the threat of retribution or rejection, or perhaps it brings up trauma of the past when speaking our truth created discord, or maybe we were abused as a result of that. This is where we start to get into the deeper aspects of healing, and this is important as we move into the self-esteem and interpersonal communication aspects of Seed of the Soul, because we can do all that we can from a nutritional and dietary point of view in order to help the thyroid. But here's what happens when we do that. We get to a point often where the issues that we've been ignoring, the lack of communication that may be present in our life, or perhaps the over communication. So I happen to be surrounded by a lot of people in my life who love to talk. And I get it, I'm patient with them, I listen, but sometimes our throat chakra is too open. Sometimes we communicate too much. We are reactive and we say whatever comes to mind without any filter. Different types of personalities, of course, but it's important to consider that the way you communicate is directly related to thyroid function. So please do not go through all of these dietary interventions and these lifestyle changes without considering what's going on in your heart and in your communication, and how that can be brought to consciousness, brought into awareness, to be integrated and healed as a means of further supporting yourself on your journey. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for riding with me on this beautiful, beautiful thyroid series, and I can't wait to see you for whatever is to come next. I'm thinking we'll probably be moving into blood sugar regulation and some other aspects of further dietary and lifestyle interventions that will support you in becoming an inspired self-master that leads with compassionate action and relentless self-love here on this planet to embody the physical, mental, and emotional tenets of well-being as a means of changing oneself in order to change the world and have a lot of fun in the process. All right, y'all. Thanks for riding. Peace.